Big tech, big brands.
The metaverse.
Combine that with blockchain and NFTs and the potential's clear.
The metaverse is here to stay.
Okay, so in this video, we're going to be exploring what the metaverse actually is. But the problem is that in popular media and in conversation, the word metaverse just gets thrown around very haphazardly by people who don't really understand what it is.
I don't know what Microsoft Teams is. I don't know what a metaverse is.
So let's try and break it down piece by piece, and let's start with the technology that actually makes the metaverse possible. And that technology is augmented reality and virtual reality. Augmented reality is about bringing the digital world into the physical world. You can do a version of this already on your phone by imposing things like dinosaurs and little creatures onto whatever your camera sees and then displaying that on your screen. And of course, the other version of augmented reality that we're familiar with are things like filters that we use on Instagram to make our faces look different. All of that is a version of augmented reality, bringing our digital world into the real world. But of course, the ultimate goal is to do this without the need for doing it through our phones, by integrating it into some kind of glasses setup so that everything that we see can have a digital layer overlaid on top of it. So that's augmented reality, one half of the puzzle of what the metaverse could look like in the future, but the other half is virtual reality. And actually, most of the time when people refer to the metaverse, this is what they're talking about. So while augmented reality was about bringing the digital world to the physical world, virtual reality is about bringing the physical world to the digital world. When you're in virtual reality, you do so by putting on a headset like this one, and in this headset will be two screens that each of your eyes will look at independently, and these two screens will display an image that works together to create the illusion of you being in a 3D environment. When you're in virtual reality, everywhere you look, everything that you see, up, down, left and right, is all digital. You literally feel like you're in a brand new place once you put on one of these headsets. In fact, this digital world that virtual reality creates for you is so convincing that psychologists and researchers in this field have come up with a term for it. They call it presence illusion.
Presence illusion.
You literally have an illusion that you're present in a place that you actually aren't. So that's what virtual reality is in terms of its most basic form of hardware. It's these two screens that you attach to your face via a headset that give you this presence illusion. But what is the potential for these technologies? What does AR and VR really represent for what the future of our interactions could be? Well, the main reason that I think that major companies of the world are betting tens of billions of dollars on this being the new big thing in technology is because virtual and augmented reality represent the first major competition to screens. Imagine a world where we no longer need physical screens. Instead, we can have digital screens, and they can be as big or as small as we like, and we can also have as many of them as we need and get rid of them or add new ones at a whim depending on whatever task we're doing. Imagine a world where we can interact with technology without the need for screen-based interactions completely. For example, you watching this video of me talking about the metaverse, rather than you watch me in my home via a 2D screen. Instead, this video could be me inviting you into my home, and I could present to you live in the same room. I could do this whole explainer video from a beach in Hawaii or the headquarters of Facebook. Part of the video could be a digital handout that I create, that I hand to you for you to look at while I'm giving my presentation. This is what the future of consuming content in virtual reality could be like. But it doesn't just have to be pre-recorded content as well. Imagine live interactions in virtual reality and all the ramifications that that will have on society. When virtual reality and the metaverse reaches its full potential, there will be no more need for offices. It will be a completely redundant technology because, well, you can recreate your entire office in virtual reality and the interactions will be virtually identical to how they are in real life. You'll be able to see your co-workers, talk to them whenever you want to, feel like you're in literally the same room as each other. Not only that, but the virtual office will be superior to the real world office. One of the major problems that many offices are finding at the moment with hybrid working is finding a space to have a meeting room because we're only limited by the physical boundaries of our walls. But imagine a virtual office. In a virtual office, you can have infinite meeting rooms. And not only that, but your meeting rooms can be anywhere in the world or outside of this world. Go have a creative ideation from the top of the Himalayas, and then afterwards have a leadership meeting in a spaceship in orbit. This is what the virtual office could be like, and it's far superior to any physical office that exists at the moment. And the implications of that on society could be absolutely monumental. For example, virtual working will become the default even more than it already is. The need, therefore, for living close to the office will be completely obsolete. You can work from anywhere in the world, and therefore that'll have massive implications for the importance of cities and concentrated populations. It'll have a huge benefit in terms of lowering housing costs and improving the quality of living for millions of people across the world. And that's just talking about working. Imagine dating in virtual reality. At the moment, physical real-world dates are actually quite limited, but imagine what a date could look like in virtual reality. You could go have a virtual coffee in a cafe in front of the Eiffel Tower, and then go see the pyramids of Giza, and then go slay a dragon, and then come back to the coffee shop to end the date. It's also far safer doing a first date in virtual reality. After all, first dates are about meeting strangers, and if you're nervous about what that person might be like, whether they're even a safe person to be around, you don't have to worry about that in virtual reality because you're not physically together, they can't actually harm you. Dating and human interaction in general can help overcome many of our natural tendencies for bias. In psychology and behavioral science, we talk a lot about in-group bias and favoritism towards people who look like us. We also talk about things like the halo effect, how attractive people are given an unfair advantage in many different realms of life simply because they're good looking. But in virtual reality, when people are interacting through avatars, then the importance of physical attractiveness is actually diminished significantly, which means that people can judge how compatible they are, but actually more predictive metrics for relationship success, like their personality and common interests. So all of this together, this is what the metaverse aims to be. It's not just a place for us to play silly games together, but it's a whole new way of forming human interactions and connecting with each other. But hang on, I hear you say. Let's snap back to actual reality for a second. Does this stuff currently exist yet? Are all of these things that I'm talking about really possible? Well, some of it is, but admittedly there are a lot of things that don't currently work that well in virtual reality. Movement, for example, is a big one that is pretty awkward at the moment. And the reason for that is because even though visually you are completely immersed in this new world, to move around you still have to use a little joystick on your controller. And while some people are able to get on with it, for a lot of people, including myself, I find this interaction extremely awkward. I find that moving around using a joystick is not only unnatural, but it's also imprecise and can be quite nauseating too. And if moving around is nauseating in virtual reality, then that means that long sessions in the metaverse just simply aren't possible. Another thing that doesn't work that well in virtual reality is touch. The controllers at the moment can only provide basic grabbing and throwing functions, and most of them also have some sort of rumble and vibration to somewhat mimic the sensation of touch. But you don't get the same kind of tactile feedback that you do in, well, real life. The texture of surfaces, the fur of an animal, the pain of being in a real fight. You don't get that in virtual reality. And that lack of tactile feedback means that the level of fidelity that you have in virtual reality is, well, it's just not really the same as in real life. And finally, another big drawback of virtual reality in its current iteration is just pure graphical horsepower. Unless you're willing to pay an extortionate amount of money for a headset, graphical performance on these devices is generally quite low. Simply rendering an image in 360 degrees requires a lot of processing horsepower, and a standalone headset that isn't tethered to a computer simply doesn't have the virtual capacity in order to render really high definition images. So for those reasons, virtual reality at the moment can still feel quite separated and not quite at the level we need it to be a one-for-one replacement for our real life interactions. But like I said, major tech companies are investing tens of billions of dollars in order to research this space and overcome those exact issues I just mentioned. When it comes to movement, the ultimate goal is to have the omnidirectional treadmill. This is a treadmill that allows you to run or walk in any direction without actually going anywhere in real life. This would be a far more intuitive way of interacting with the virtual world, and many companies are already looking into making this technology affordable and possible. In fact, at the moment there's already versions of omnidirectional treadmills that you can buy to your house. They are pretty expensive and the running and walking on them does look pretty awkward, but from the people who use them, they say that they are actually incredibly immersive and do achieve the goal of more natural movement in virtual reality. Overcoming the issue of touch and texture has also been in development for a long time in the virtual reality space. Rather than using controllers, in the future we might have virtual reality gloves. These gloves would have lots of different motors built into the structure of the fabric so that as you touched things in the virtual world, those motors would activate in order to somewhat recreate the sensation of touching something in real life. On top of that, companies are actually developing pain suits as well. Suits that give you electric shocks to mimic the sensation of pain. Now you might be wondering why people would want more pain in their virtual world, but again, it's just another layer of immersion that you want in the virtual reality world. Imagine playing a shooting game where getting shot actually hurts. How does that change the way that people interact with the game? People are going to be a lot more conservative. It actually changes people's behavior when there are consequences to their actions. And finally, when it comes to the low graphical performance of these devices, there are many different avenues that the industry can take. First is the most obvious, which is that processors will just get faster, more efficient, and cheaper over time, which means that as they get better, so does the graphical performance on these devices. But that's not the only solution. Another way that graphical performance could be improved is through not doing the processing on the device at all. Instead, as internet connections get faster and more reliable, it could be the case that the metaverse becomes completely cloud-based, where all of the processing is done off-site and simply streamed to your headset so that your headset doesn't have to do the heavy lifting itself. And thirdly, there are more innovative and creative solutions that are rumored to be releasing in headsets that are coming out this very year. This includes a new technology being implemented into headsets called foveated rendering. This is where headsets have eye tracking technology built into them, so the headset can know exactly where you, the user, are looking in virtual reality. Then what the headset does is use this information to render only the part of the screen that you're focusing on in extremely high definition, while the rest of it can be in lower resolution, similar to how we see in real life, how only the thing that we're focusing on is in real high definition, whereas everything else in our peripheral is more blurry. By cleverly allocating processing resources in this way, virtual reality devices are able to significantly improve the visual experience for users without the need for significantly faster processors. So if you're wondering if the metaverse is really going to live up to all the hype that's surrounding it, I'm willing to put my money that this is going to be an absolutely massive part of our lives within the next 5 years and beyond. It is so easy to dismiss novel technology like this as just a bunch of hype that kids are doing, but just look at what the major companies are doing. The biggest, most powerful tech companies in the world are investing tens of billions of dollars into this industry. There's no way that this isn't going to be a big thing. In my opinion, it's going to be at least as important as the invention of the smartphone in terms of how it changes our behavior on a day-to-day basis. The metaverse, whether that's predominantly in virtual or augmented reality, is going to be where we're going to be spending the bulk of our time, our money, and our lives in the future. So, with all that said, are you ready for the metaverse? Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video on the metaverse. Now, if you're a long-term viewer of this channel, you might be wondering why I, as a behavioral science consultant, am so interested in VR and the metaverse. Well, here's my point of view. In the future, I think that the metaverse and virtual reality is going to be our primary way of interacting with technology, which means that this is the space where we're going to be needing to design our behavioral interventions in the future. Right now, as a behavioral science consultant, many of my projects involve optimizing customer journeys on mobile, on websites, or optimizing emails, because that's the way that people currently interact with technology. Those are our touch points with customers, users, and citizens. But in the future, this is all going to be taken to the metaverse. So that's where our interventions are going to need to live. The entire customer journey is going to be in virtual reality. So when you think about it from that point of view, understanding how virtual reality affects our judgment and decision making is crucial for being an effective behavioral scientist preparing for the future. So that's why I'm so interested in this space. It's really important, I think, from a business perspective, but it's also just really fun, interesting, and exciting. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.